Alrighty, so, we will resume with you.
Okay, the first item is, I received notification from Officer DePasquale of his resignation effective March 23rd of this year. So I'm asking the board to accept his resignation with regret and to send them a letter indicating same.
Okay,
I'll make a motion that we allow the chair to sign the letter.
alright, and we do, I'll second that. Definitely, it is with regret, so we will make sure that that isn't
Thank you
part
for
of
his
the letter and
service.
thank him for his service. Alright, all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
Okay,
Item number 2, I have a purchase order here made out to the Stratford County Sheriff's Department. It's our annual fee for the tactical team and their supplies of $1,000, and that will come out of our conference and dues. And we've been paying that for about 4 years now.
All right, I'll move purchase order 1895 to Stratford County Sheriff for $1,000 for annual fee for tactical teams and supplies.
alright, I'll second it. Any discussion?
Nope.
Hearing none, all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
And the last item that I have is I met with the folks with Homeland Security on Friday, and we talked about a number of grants. The first one is a 50-50 match for the generator. So we'll have that forthcoming in the very near future. The second one is they will provide 100% funding up to $6,000 so we can provide the fire department, EMS folks with some equipment for tactical gear in the event that there's an active shooter and they need to go and do a rescue operation during this event. It's actually called a warm zone, where they actually go in with the police protect them, they drag the folks out. I'm going to be meeting with the fire chief later this evening to see if his folks might be interested in receiving this equipment and this training.
Okay,
And the last item is, there's a new grant out there for nonprofits where Homeland Security will give them 100% funding to increase building security, camera systems, alarm systems, and the like. And first one I thought it was St. Mary's Church, and I reached out to them to see if that would be something that they might be interested in, and they are. I just want to make sure and get your permission to do that for a nonprofit in my status as the Emergency Operations Director in town. So,
how many do we have in town?
4.
Garrison?
Garrison Clares, American Legion,
Okay.
the church, and the hospital.
yeah.
Oh, okay. They must have.
Yeah, the hospital is
offset. Yeah,
separate.
no, I think it's a good idea if they're interested, I'm okay with it.
So we're not involved with having to put money out?
No,
Okay.
no, the nonprofit puts the money up.
Okay.
I just have to submit the paperwork as the town's emergency management director,
Yeah?
so.
It's like a guarantee though, they don't put up the money and then get denied, right?
Correct.
Oh,
Right.
okay, it's
They-
100%
They find out what the cost is,
Yeah.
they submit the application,
Yeah.
it's approved, then they can purchase the equipment, pay for it.
Got it,
It's just like all the other grants that we get from
Okay.
Homeland Security and Highway Safety.
okay, yep,
So, yeah, you don't buy anything until you get it
you
approved,
get approved, got
or you
it.
get stuck with it.
Yes, okay, no, that's a great idea.
Is it worth checking with Garrison players as well, or is it?
Well, I guess I could reach out to them, I did not think of them.
Well, we also don't wanna make sure it's not too much money and then it gets denied, or does it?
Well, they would be separate, they'd be separate
Okay.
grants.
Okay, all right,
The only problem with this is that the grant application deadline is March 15th. So, I'll reach out to Garrison Players
Yeah.
tomorrow.
yeah, or, or if it's, reoccurring, then they can do it next year or
Yeah,
something.
maybe next year too.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a good idea, all right,
That's all I have for you folks, anything for me?
I think so.
I want to thank you for the fast response in your tactical team yesterday.
All right.
I had a rabid raccoon
Oh, it was you?
wander into the yard and then wouldn't leave. It wasn't afraid at all,
Oh, my.
and it was the second one in 20 minutes. Jim said that we had to take care of.
Oh, my.
But yeah, one day I guess. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
All right, you too.
My windows get all smudged from the dogs freaking out.
I bet.
out there, so I don't require is highway planning to come in
No.
now? They're not, okay, all right.
Welfare we can do
We
at the
can
end.
do in it, NHMA
Do you
policy.
wanna, I'm sorry, do you
I'm
wanna go
sorry.
up to community input?
Oh, I'm sorry, community input, no, all set, all right, about it.
It's okay.
And then consent calendar, by consensus, okay? The approval of
I
the-
couldn't find the February 10th minutes. I'm sure they're there, I just couldn't find them, so if we can,
Is that
Can
the
you
right
share them?
date?
that was our last meeting, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It would be
Yeah,
full.
I thought yeah, they were there.
Okay,
They were in my email, I think.
I
We can
just,
defer it,
okay.
let's
yeah,
defer it
just-
so you
I went
can
and
see
looked
it,
this
okay.
afternoon, and I struggle with the drive sometimes.
All right, so, is he intending to come and talk about the heat issue?
I believe so.
Okay, all right.
I'm not sure.
All right, New Hampshire MA Policy Committee?
So, so that goes back to the email that I sent the board today. You haven't had a chance to really necessarily even read it, but given that the announcement's been out there for a bit, I thought I would put it on the agenda. So it's twofold. The first is, that's about the committee. I'm requesting the board's permission to offer to serve on one of the 3 policy committees. They have 15 to 20 members. They meet on either Mondays or Fridays, 5 to 6 times in April and May. I wouldn't serve if it's on a Monday, because Mondays are too crazy, whether it's a board night or not. But if I can manage to get a Friday slot on one of the committees, I would like to serve. If that's okay with the board.
Yeah.
I did reply, I'm in favor of you serving, but I do not want you to use your personal time. It's whatever you learn from these meetings, you can bring back to our town. So I don't think it should be used as personal time.
Yeah, I mean, it's 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
It's 5 or 6 times.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that there's things that you can do to bring back here.
Yeah.
So
Thank you. Further, that committee evaluates proposals that member communities submit as suggestions for potential policies to propose to legislatures for enactment. And so I intend to submit at least one relative to nitrogen for committee consideration. It would probably only affect the 12-member communities, but at the same, as far as their MS4 permit, because they're the ones with the nitrogen permit, but it would really benefit all the waters in New Hampshire, and the small towns don't have the power to enact those kinds of ordinances. So it would really be instrumental in the ability to meet the new nitrogen permit or not. It doesn't mean that if it were to pass and if fertilizer were to go away, that doesn't mean that we would necessarily get compliant. It's a small part of the puzzle, but it is still an essential part of the puzzle, and it's not something that we have the authority to do, but it lies with the state. So so there's that. The other one is relative to septic tanks. I don't know if that's, because that's on private property and they would have to be retrofitted, and we have no power to compel people to retrofit their septic tanks. The state could, or the state could offer some kind of grant program to help implement retrofitting or something. I don't know if that's appropriate for legislation, but I was going to reach out to the other MS4 communities and see if they wanted to chime in on the draft of that legislation, or whether or not that would even be workable. But it's, again, something that would be germane to the committee and the committee's opinion too.
So, do you know if the septic ones is based on the age of the septic tank versus it's any septic tank?
It's probably any septic tank, but of course it would be more necessary or more helpful on an older one or a failing one.
True, then they would
But-
have to meet code based on
But
that.
theoretically, it would be all septic tanks that would need to be upgraded if that part of the situation were to be, if we were to be compliant in that way. I can't even say compliant because we can't comply by compelling private property owners to
Right.
do that, but
Right.
yes, it would be all of them.
What's the change? Like, what's the upgrade?
I have no idea what the technology is, or what's involved, or what the cost is, or anything else. So, he found the fire department. So, if there are no objections, I'll carry forward with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think that's a great idea. Can you explain to Miles, is it better than I signed? on behalf of the-
Well, I was gonna save that for,
Oh, okay, that's fine.
for,
For town administrator update?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. All right, guys, you're next. Bob, did you wanna say something to them? Is that where you back?
I'm just waiting for him to get done so we can have a chat.
Okay, very good.
A couple things we can chat about. I came up with another one for you. Good evening. Couple things of business for us to take care of. A couple of POs scored away. First one is $17.99. It's for annual dues for the Seacoast Chief Fire Officers Mutual Aid. It's $300. And that'll come out of our association due line. Any funds it is, first one.
I'll move purchase order 1799 to Seacoast Chief Fire Officers Mutual Aid for $300 for the annual membership dues.
I'll second it. Any discussion?
No.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And we're all familiar what that's for, right?
Of course, that's the dues. Would you like to explain?
Well, I'm just throwing it out there. That is the Seacoast Chiefs now has 42 member fire departments in the Seacoast region, Massachusetts and southern Maine. Basically, it's an organization that meets monthly for chief stuff. All kinds of new regulations, any kind of new code changes, just updating different fire departments, whether talking about run cards or training opportunities or whatever it is. It's just one way that this large, and the group is getting larger. When we first got involved in it, 5 years ago, it was 28 fire departments, now it's 42. So it keeps growing, and they see the advantage to being a member. If we have a large incident, a train derailment or something to do with a bus accident that requires a large response or a specialized response, a lot of it was supported by them because they have all that specialized equipment that the town in no way could afford. So that's why we keep up our membership with those people. Pretty important for what they can provide us. Second purchase order I have is 1809. It's the quality fire protection, and it's for a total of $665. Basically, it's for the hydro certification of all of our SCBA bottles. They need to be done in 5-year intervals. They have to be certified. They go through the test. They drain them down, pull them apart, fill them back up, test them, make sure everything works. And it has to be done, like I said, in a specific amount of time. So we just had all of ours done. It's gonna come out of our Scott Air Pack line. We haven't touched that line yet, so like I said, it was for $665. And the spin-off of some of that is, that's all 19 of the bottles that we have got done. And when Berwick had their incident with Captain Barnes, that was one thing that was found in the investigation that they had not kept up on, was the servicing and hydroing of all their bottles. So that was one part of the fine that they had to pay because they weren't keeping up with that. So this is our stay ahead of the game moment.
Okay. I'll move purchase order 1809 to Quality Fire Protection for $665 for SCBA bottle, I can't read what that, certification.
I'll second it. It was $665, did you get it?
I got $665, but what kind of bottle?
SCBA bottles.
And they all passed.
They all
They're all, it's
Yeah,
Scotty or
they're
Pack
passed.
bottles.
self-contained breathing apparatus.
All
Oh,
right,
thank you.
They're not underwater, so they're not scuba.
all right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those bottles have a service like everything else, they're like 10 years. And you fill that bottle for $300, now it's $500 per bottle. And you have to replace them, we have a rotation that the chief Toof takes care of. We'll buy bottles as needed to stay ahead of the curve, so we'll have one big expense at one moment. So that's the way that we take care of that to monitor it. Thank you. Okay, just have a couple of questions for you before we go to our next thing. When I picked these up the other day, these are all the registrations that are now gonna become permanent for the fire trucks. They have a line on it for signature. Is that you?
No.
Is that them? Or is that me?
It's typically been the department head who would sign
Okay.
their vehicle registrations.
Okay, I mean, I just wanted to make sure before I go and do that, because I know I had some other stuff and it was like, no, we'll sign on it. So I just wanted to make sure, because that'll be done this week. But on every one of these, it has to have a signature, so it makes sense, but I just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page, that everybody's aware that's what's gonna happen, that they're not become permanent fire trucks. We don't have to go chasing the annual like we might with our own vehicles. They're gonna go down, be done, get all registered with this stuff, and as long as we have the vehicle, it's the same thing, so we don't have to chase them anymore. So that'll be changed over this week. Okay? Now, I guess the next thing that I wanna go over, and that's one reason why Sean is with me, is I have some information, and he has some information, and you've been kind of tip of the iceberg with it. I discussed it with you at one point. And I think we'd like to discuss it under non-public.
Okay.
Is it employee related?
No. System related at the fire station.
System?
System. We have to know, like, under what qualification that it falls under non-public, because we can't do it if we want to, we have to do it only if it qualifies. So I will pull up for you what qualifies, and you can
Okay.
tell me.
Well, you know what I discussed with you the other day,
Well,
issue with oil tanks.
yeah, and I'm not offhand sure what, I don't think offhand that would qualify,
That's
but
fine,
again,
just-
I'll show you what does, and,
How about D?
Who do you know?
She's got a cheat sheet.
do you have a cheat sheet there?
No. What are you talking about, it's D? Oh, there.
Equipment.
No, it's not personal property.
Okay, it starts here at 2, only the following
I
items
have
can
no idea what you're talking about.
So, the big ones are personnel or legal
Yeah,
or defamation of character.
yeah, no, we're not under any of that stuff. Finances and all that kind of stuff.
Or if it could jeopardize somebody's reputation or jeopardize some future,
No, I don't think we fall under any of that, so I just, thought maybe at one point it might be school board, legal advice. Don't think we're gonna find any, so.
if at any point it looks like it's going into a non-public conversation, we can call it a non-public.
Well, we've been having trouble with the heating system, and we've kind of started some of that. You have this quote to replace, it started when we lost one of the heating units out of Sealy out of the station. And that happened probably a month ago, and we've been chasing them down for a quote, we got the quote, so it started with this. And ever since this, what happened was we had to call one night because it was just leaking and having all kinds of issues with it, they isolated it outside of the system. And when that happened, shortly after that, we started having position problems with the main heating unit. To the point of 4 times we've had to call them for no heat calls. And the last one was, last weekend, just before we had that below zero stuff. So this week, last week, they sent their so-called expert in to try to figure out exactly why we're having issues. We thought it might have been related back to the loss of this one heating unit, but apparently that's not the case. So, as they came back each time, one time they said, when I was there with them, was the oil line, which comes from outside from the tank, might have been frozen. Because he drew it out and it had bubbles and it wasn't clear and all like it should be. And I don't even know how big the tank is, you got any idea? Harry, have any idea?
He might, I don't know. I don't know.
And I'm sure this is the original
I
tank,
didn't
but,
think you could put an oil tank underground.
Well, not under current standards.
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, no, okay.
so that's kind of where this is gonna lead to.
It was before him, it was way before him,
So
so.
I'm probably a brownie or something. I mean, I don't know, I have an idea where it is, only because I know where the fill is.
Mhm.
But, so that was the first thing that they looked at. The second time was on another one of the cold eaves, they said there was too much cold air coming in through the intake on the side of the building. And when it got into the actual firing spot in the burner, it was, should be very wide like this, and because of the cold air, it made it narrow, so it wasn't firing. So that's what they're telling me. I'm not a heating technician, but I've learned a lot in the last few weeks. So they took all that intake stuff off, left it open, and it was working fine. They came back again with another no heat call. And again, they likened it to the fact that it might have been frozen. I went outside, because there's copper tubing that comes out of the ground, runs into the building, and I put some insulation on it. Tried to prevent
On the tubing?
On the tubing outside, I secured that, you know, like you would do any insulation on your pipe in your basement. So I took care of that part of it. And then when they came back in the last time, they hooked all the intake in, the incoming air back into the system, it was all fired up and everything. But they were talking about, there may be, the tank may be leaking. The tank and or the plumbing too is the other thing that they said may be happening. Maybe. Short of doing some sort of, testing or whatnot, I don't know how we determine that there is or is not a leak. So, I don't know where we wanna go with that.
I have asked Tom Clark to reach out to you because I think he might be helpful. If nothing else, he might be able to recommend vendors who could help you figure out more specifically what the problem is. And particularly what's going on in the soil, if anything.
Yeah, because if it is leaking, that's another whole can of beans.
It's an
We
order of
don't wanna
magnitude.
really get into.
Leaking, wouldn't your fuel, I mean, you would have to order it more often, right? Or are you just assuming because it's been so cold that you're using
I
uses that you're
don't do
using?
anything with, I don't do anything with ordering or any of that stuff.
No, I know, but, we did the bills.
Right, so he would
I don't-
have,
I
he
don't
would
see
it's our
see the
bill
trend.
I don't see
I'd
any-
have to look, actually, that's an interesting point.
I never see that, and whatever,
I know, it comes here,
how
actually, it's right
often they
here.
fill it, I guess it was filled up just for the last snowstorm. And my guess, it's gotta be bigger than a 250 gallon tank in the ground, it's gotta be bigger than a home type of tank, and I'm guessing 500 gallon tank, I'm just guessing this. As
Okay.
big as that
Has to,
station
because
is,
the
and what the
station's
needs
size,
are,
yeah.
and as big as that heating unit is,
Townsend and Harry, I don't know.
I mean,
It's
they-
not gonna tell you a
they'd
trend,
be
though.
filling it
It's
up
not
every
gonna
2
tell you,
weeks.
just
Well,
Townsend
might
will.
tell us.
It'll tell you how
Gallons.
many gallons the last delivered, if anything, but not the trend.
Yeah, and I don't know trends as far as what we're doing.
So-
So talking to the tech,
Yeah.
they said 2010, 2012, they were supposed to have replaced the single copper lined running in cement, that was no longer legal. So part of the question here is we replaced the heating unit before then, why didn't they bring that up to code as part of the furnace replacement? So there's really, part of what they're thinking is the reason we're drawing air is because there's a leak in that copper line or in the tank, and that's why when they're drawing it up, they're seeing the oil's not looking the way it's supposed to.
So, have we always had Townsend?
So
I know it used to be owned by something else.
I would just be careful about names and what's going on and
Should
go
become
into non-public if you wanna, like, we have to be careful about attaching names to actions, I just wanna.
They're a vendor.
I understand, but we wouldn't wanna disparage a reputation.
I'm not, I just asked
I'm not
a
saying that you
question.
are, I'm just saying that we're leading down a. So, as far as I've been aware, for at least as long as, the 6 years that I've been here, yes,
But that's not a long time,
that's 2014, so it's before that, so I don't know before that who the vendor was.
Are you asking us to go into non-public?
No, I'm just saying if you're gonna
Well, I have more
attach,
questions, so,
then it might be better.
okay.
I'll move we go into non-public, I don't know what the letter is.
It's C,
For RSA 91A,
No, Steve. Did you say C?
yeah, it's C,
it's 91A:3, section 2, letter C.
Oh, C here, okay.
reputation.
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 Right.
Yeah, they delivered 176
Oh.
gallons.
Oh,
I bet it's a
camera.
Hold on, we haven't voted.
275.
Miles?
So,
Or you
Or
can do
letter
this.
from DEC.
Yeah.
It can be, not necessarily have to be a Monday if you
Yep,
have
yep,
information
I
and
understand.
decisions made.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So, we have, so we have the welfare case, is that active
Well-
or not active?
That's active, and we need to go into
Okay,
non-public for
non-public.
that, but we can finish the other items before we do that if you want,
All
since
right.
we've.
We're not gonna do purchase policy review tonight, are we?
I think I'd rather have Jessica's
Yeah,
input. I mean,
yeah,
I
alright.
read through it, I'm actually okay with it, but,
It's good, that's progress.
yeah.
Yes. Alrighty, so board member activities and updates.
I've got nothing. There is a stormwater committee meeting soon, next week.
March, yeah, it's next week,
That I'm gonna try to make, it's the 4th?
yeah.
Okay. Yep, but other than that, oh, is this the next, so the election is
2 weeks from tomorrow.
2 weeks, okay. No, it's next week. It's the
No.
3rd.
It's
No?
the third.
But it's, so that's Super Tuesday, but no, our election is the 10th.
I thought
We have
the
two
sign
elections in
out
one
front
month?
said
That's
3rd.
for the meet and greet,
Oh,
so you
okay.
can talk with the candidates.
I only looked at the date, I didn't look at
Yeah.
what it was.
It's not our election.
Okay.
It's not our election, okay,
No.
alright. So, okay, I don't think I have anything either.
You have recreation on Wednesday. You're really trying not to remember that, are you?
Uh-huh, okay, town administrator?
So, I attended the public hearing last week, the Environmental Protection Agency and the Department of Environmental Services at the DES Office of Peace, regarding the nitrogen permit. It was really a great experience to hear all of the specific detail of how this is gonna affect the larger communities. The larger communities were very well represented. They each had probably 4 or 5 people speak on their behalf. The 3 state senators who represent the 12 communities also spoke. I was the only comment representing a small town, which is really unfortunate because this permit is going to affect small towns disproportionately to larger towns. So I have drafted my written comments, which are due in early March. All the communities that spoke are requesting an extension to the deadline. They're not likely to do that until the deadline. So I'm going to share my draft response with the other small communities and encourage them to either sign it or revise it and sign it, or consider sending something for a response, because without hearing from small communities, the EPA and DES can't know the impact and how it's different than larger communities.
Who are the small communities other than us?
They go south. So there's Exeter, which is of course much larger than us. Most of them are larger, but not necessarily as large as
Yeah.
Dover and Rochester.
Yeah.
Somersworth is. Newington and Newmarket.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
Newfields.
I think Newfields might be, I'm not sure, but so it goes south, and
Yep.
that's,
So not like Milton, like doesn't start up there?
No,
Milton actually might be, they're mostly south, but Milton might be because it's on the river, so that would make
That's the
sense.
oh,
source.
it's
It
for the
starts
rivers.
there, doesn't
Right,
it?
well, right, it's all communities directly on waterways that are feeding directly into the Great Bay Estuary, and it's all about the health of the Great Bay Estuary. The other thing that the communities are requesting is a scientific peer review of the data that is compelling the EPA and DES to create this nitrogen load limit as it is. It is going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to meet that level, but also it's not really clear that that nitrogen level is going to have the intended effect, or that you can't have that intended effect with more nitrogen necessarily.
For us to meet it, or just meet it in general?
All of the communities are finding that it would be, so that's the experience of small town, and that is my comment, is that we don't really know how this is going to affect us. We don't know the cost of upgrading the water sewer district. We don't know how we can implement the changes they're requesting on private property, for example, because we can't regulate fertilizer, and because we can't go on private property, and because over 50% of the nitrogen comes from atmospheric sources. So we can't, we don't have on-staff engineers to help us run the data to determine how will our total nitrogen decrease if we do X. All the larger communities have run those models. They're all experiencing between 8 and 12% controllable land mass within their jurisdiction. In other words, 8 to 12% of the land in their city or town is owned by the city or DOT. So you can impact change in those areas, but that leaves most of it clearly that area that you really can't impact under current law, because you can't go on private property and like that. So because we don't have on-staff engineers, we're at a further disadvantage that we can't really quantify the impact of this permit. I was really glad to see that Clem Mishu attended the hearing. The commissioners are aware of what's going on, and I'm sure they're trying to work on it. They're now in the loop with the area community, so they'll be kept informed of shared information and like that. So, and likewise, I will share with them my draft comments for them to consider, and they're aware that I'm doing that. So that's going on. Denise signed a letter that was drafted by the city of Dover, compelling the Department of Environmental Services to conduct a scientific peer review of the science. Like I just said, there's no real indication that the level of nitrogen that they are prescribing on the communities is really going to have the desired effect in Great Bay Estuary. It's not clear that you couldn't tolerate more nitrogen and still receive the desired effect. And also that it's just not, it does not seem scientifically feasible to accomplish those nitrogen load limits given current technology. So there's a lot of concern about that. That letter was signed by all of the 12 communities going to DES, compelling them to ask for a scientific peer review so that they can substantiate the reason for the permit being written the way it is. So one might hope that we'll hear about that soon. Much like any other governmental entity, you have a public hearing, you hear from the people, but in the end, the governmental entity can do what it will, and we don't know what they will, so.
This is the state DES.
Yes, so this is all a result of the Clean Water Act.
Okay.
The Environmental Protection Agency has, found these key areas that are at risk or endangered.
Yep.
Great Bay Estuary is among them. And so anything felt at the local level comes through the state. it never goes directly from federal
Okay.
to the local level, and so DES is the intermediary. They are working with DES. DES and EPA have worked together to create the language and the requirements that would be imparted on these 12 communities. It's really interesting and worth noting that we are experiencing this differently in New Hampshire than those communities across the river are experiencing it. Elliott and South Berwick and Berwick are also MS4 communities, but the state plays a much greater role in the implementation of that permit and mitigating the nitrogen over there. So there's also 42 other communities in the Great Bay Estuary watershed who are not subject to any nitrogen load limits. So the burden is on the 12 communities because we're directly on the river, even though these other communities play a part in the contamination of that water.
So how can you
So-
ever clean up what you're supposed to be doing if they are continually to put it in?
Well, so there's no way to avoid putting nitrogen into the
I know
water,
we need to
but,
lower it, but if they don't have any restrictions
right,
of what they can do, but we do,
right, we're paying the
How-
consequences for other people's actions,
and how
essentially.
you ever get it where you need to be if not everyone is on that same task?
That is one among many problems with this,
Yeah.
yes.
So is this just the normal course of events where they ask for everything and then you negotiate something? Or we don't know?
I wouldn't say that there's anything normal or regular about this, and we'll see what happens. It is true that the last go-around with MS4 permitting, it was requested that they do that the state do a peer review, and they ultimately did. And that changed, I believe, the requirements of the permit. So, you know, there can be other factors involved in how state agencies come to the determinations they do. And science is where it should be, but that's not always,
Right.
you know, what influences policy.
Mm.
So we'll see what happens with that, but also know that it's not gonna end with nitrogen, but, you know, so here we are in our second year of a stormwater permit. We're about to get a nitrogen permit, and then at some point down the road, we're going to be subjected to a phosphorus permit, potentially. So, you know, we may eventually be hiring a part-time, you know, consistent engineer to deal with all these things, because they're complex. And because we don't understand our systems and how to, you know, I would try not to project that, but we'll see where this is going. It's just, I don't want you to think that this is the end of it, because
No.
clearly there's more.
Oh, there's always more,
Okay.
So, there's that. On another note, on Thursday, I'm going to the Stratford Regional Planning Commission meeting. I understand Jessica will also be attending. Herbie Wada will also, he's going to training tomorrow for being a commissioner, and I think he's gonna intending to attend on Thursday as well. And that's what that
And who's
form
that?
is, Herbie Wada.
Oh, right, okay.
That's the form
Oh,
to officially
appoint him.
make him a commissioner with the Stratford Regional Planning Association, Commission. So Ed and I are going to be going up to that meeting to talk about how we were able to change what happens at the transfer station. This is where being a small community has really benefited us, that, you know, because we have a transfer station and we don't do curbside pickup and we're relatively small, we were able to change pretty quickly with the market, and we haven't suffered financially with the downfall of single stream the way other communities are continuing to suffer because they're not able to change systems as quickly, and that's particularly true of curbside pickup communities. So, in any case, people are still working to try to figure this out, and Ed and I are gonna go up to Rochester on Thursday and help explain how we got to where we are. And Senator Waters, I know, has been on a committee looking into this as well, and he's gonna explain the committee's findings. So that's Thursday. That's really that. The town report is getting printed this week. Things are coming to a close. Still working on the voter guide addendum. Got thrown a loophole with the whole nitrogen experience last week that became much bigger than I had anticipated, so
Okay,
All right.
there's that.
all set to move on.
Mhm.
I have a couple of purchase orders. Who should this one be made out to for window envelopes? I'll take care of this one. I swear we did
I thought
this
we
already.
did that. Didn't we do Jeanette?
Yeah, to Jeanette Gagney. I know we did last time.
Yeah,
Yes.
I know you did.
yeah.
Okay,
Why do we have
so I
another
think
one?
because
I don't
the
know.
invoice is here, maybe,
Maybe she just didn't remember that you had
Okay.
done it.
I don't know if we need to void
No,
this or-
well, I'll take care of it, yes, I
We'll
will.
just make sure that we do, because she only did one meeting, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
Yes.
I know we signed it.
Yep, okay. I'll move purchase order 1909 to B&B Printing for $280 for envelopes for motor vehicle and dog license renewals.
Alrighty, I'll second it. Have these at special, oh, is it got the
They're
return address?
letterhead, yeah, they're
Oh, okay.
letterhead envelopes, window letterhead envelopes.
Okay. Any questions?
No.
All right, all those in favor say aye?
Aye. This, I think I've mixed up my folders.
That's okay, there's nothing else in here, I
We
think.
shouldn't sign this until we have addresses and everything on here.
I can do that,
Okay,
yes,
all right.
Okay. We have the letter from the, this is the auditor's letter, right?
Yes, so that is a form for the state, it goes as part of the portal, and the tax rate setting document. It's just a required document that we do every year, notifying them that we do have an auditor picked out. So, by all means, you can change it, but that's what that is.
So I'll move that we allow Denise to sign this form MS 60A from the Department of Revenue Administration.
All right, I'll second it. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye?
Aye. The annual facility report for the solid waste facility, which also needs the chair's signature.
We're not gonna worry about this one
Oh,
tonight,
okay.
but you can do that one, which is the transfer station, it's the same thing for the
Oh,
transfer
okay.
station facility report.
Annual facility report for the transfer station. So I'll move that we authorize Denise to sign this report.
And what does the annual report consist of? Like,
So, it talks about how many tons of the different materials we collected throughout the year, how many materials were on hand at the end of the year, whether or not they were all generated in-state or out-of-state, and who our operators are and when their license expires.
okay. So, I see Ed is initialed it here, but I have to sign it as well? Or-
Yes.
Okay, all right. All those in favor say aye?
Aye.
We shouldn't do it in the pencil.
There should be a printed, is there not?
This pencil.
Keep,
This is
oh,
our
all right,
pencil.
so maybe that's what,
think
I
that's what that
apologize,
was.
okay, so this is the real printed copy
Okay.
based on his notes. So
So
those are
there's
his
a
notes,
signature line there.
Oh,
sorry about that.
but then he's not, he hasn't signed this one.
Well, and that's okay, because
Oh.
you're really the governing body,
Okay,
so.
all right.
Awesome. That's all that I had in these folders.
And you looked through the ones that Jessica would have looked through as well, that's what this is?
That's what
Oh,
that
okay,
one
all right.
is.
Push this one over there,
Yeah, and that's that, so, I think we're good.
okay. All right, and, okay, community input?
I just have a question. Who is the town report dedicated to this year?
It's dedicated both to Ed Jansen and,
Ron Brown,
yes, Ron Brown.
retired fire chief. Thank you. John, no?
No.
All right.
Wait,
When you're, like, before you, I just don't want you to adjourn, welfare
Okay.
before you adjourn.
oh, yeah,
Yeah.
so I'll move we go into non-public session for RSA 91A, point 3, section 2,
See.
letter C for the welfare.
All right.
I did C.
Roll call.
Yes, it's reputation, that's what qualifies for welfare.
Oh,
It's just
I
another
didn't know
thing.
that.
Yes.
Miles?
Yes.
Denise, yes. We are non-public, and then we'll be leaving after the fact.